Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage J Street President Jeremy Ben-Ami.
Good evening, everybody. And thank you so much, Dror. What an inspiring film, what an inspiring speech. I really appreciate your being here, and I appreciate your work so much. Thank you. Thank you as well to my board chair and my partner and now departing board chair, Davide Guillot. I appreciate everything you have done to get our work off the ground, and I will miss you in the formal role of chair, but continue to work with you on the board. So thank you. Thank you to all the rest of the board members and the national and local leadership of J Street and J Street U, so well represented by Nancy and Lauren earlier and all of the great leaders. And thank you to you, the 2,800 activists and leaders who've made the journey here from around the country. It is absolutely an amazing sight. I also want to acknowledge the members of Knesset who are here tonight. We are very privileged that we are going to hear in a little bit from Justice Minister Tzipi Livni. We are joined by opposition leader Shelly Yachimovich, Meretz party leader Zahava Galon, Tzachi Hanegbi, Yitzhak Vachnin, Meir Shitri, Merav Mikaeli, and Stav Shafir. How amazing is this room? This is really incredible. I'm so excited. Who could have imagined the strides that we would make in just 5 short years? From a basement startup to a respected and vibrant voice at the center of the national and communal debate in this country when it comes to Israel and the Middle East. We owe all of our success to all of you who've joined our movement, but we know that none of this would have been possible without the incredible staff that works for us at J Street. In particular, I just have to echo Davide's thanks to Sarah Beller, who is our conference organizer, and the terrific team that put this conference together. There are a million moving pieces. You'll be seeing them over the next few days. Some of the wheels will come spinning off at various times, and we'll glue them right back on and keep going. The thought and care and the midnight oil that have been burned in order to make this spectacular event, they just simply can't be understated or overappreciated. And I just want to add my special personal thanks to Rachel Lerner, who modeled how you put this together and put the last 3 conferences together. You've already heard in just the first hour a fair amount about the word leadership. And leadership is going to be the theme that runs throughout this conference. For those of us who have worked trying to resolve and help to resolve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict for many, many long years, perhaps the saddest refrain in our songbook is that the solutions that we propose are supported by the majorities of the people on both sides, but we lack the leadership to translate that fact into an actual 2-state deal. When we first came up with the tagline for this conference in late 2012, Our Time to Lead, it was the U.S. that seemed to be stepping back from a leadership role in resolving the conflict. Our goal then was simply to get the conflict back on the president's agenda and to get the diplomatic process to solve it back on track. So much to our delight in the intervening months, that's precisely what's happened. First, we saw President Obama travel to the region in March and make a heartfelt plea that Dror mentioned to put Israeli peace negotiations not only back on the agenda, but high on the agenda. It was a memorable speech in Jerusalem to Israel's young people. And the president made the case that peace is not only necessary, peace is possible, and peace is just. And then we were blessed, in my opinion, when we saw a new Secretary of State, John Kerry, come into office ready to tackle this conflict with incredible passion and energy. His single-minded focus over the course of months is what brought the parties back to the table. And we then saw Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Mahmoud Abbas return to the negotiating table, each facing down incredible internal political challenges. Yet to no one's surprise, the restart of process, the restart of talks, has not exactly inspired a tremendous surge of energy. In fact, it's been met by widespread skepticism and cynicism. On our left, the case is made that a two-state solution is no longer viable, and we must consider other models. Maybe it's time for one state in which Jews and Palestinians can live together peacefully and democratically. On our right, we hear calls, let's just end the conflict by annexing the West Bank to Israel. The one-state prescription from the left may be rooted in commendable idealism, but the prescription does not stand up to the test of reality or history. Recent history provides no evidence that nationalism is receding or that the world is moving towards universalism. Rather, we see a growth in tribalism, often tragically accompanied by brutality or religious and ethnic hatred. And as for the one-state prescription on the right, annexing the West Bank, all of us at J Street, we understand, we have long argued, that this would present Israel with an unacceptable choice. You either deny the Palestinians their basic civil rights and end Israel's democracy, or you give full rights to all and put an end to the dream of Israel as the national home of the Jewish people. It continues to be and will always be J Street's fundamental credo that the only solution to this conflict is through establishing a national homeland for each of the two peoples. 2 states for 2 peoples living side by side in peace and security. At a dinner the other night, I heard Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas explain his readiness for a 2-state solution. And he put it in the context of his own people's self-interest. He said, we don't favor 2 states as a favor to Israel. We're not pursuing 2 states as a favor to John Kerry and the Americans or to the international community. It is what my people, the Palestinian people, need so we can control our own fate. That's the exact same rhetoric that I have heard so many times from the Israeli leaders who I respect, including our keynote speaker, Tzipi Livni. The 2-state solution isn't a favor to anyone. It is in the self-interest of the State of Israel. It is in the self-interest of the Palestinian people, and it is the only way that we will secure the future for the people of the region and their children and their grandchildren. But I want to touch for a moment on another rationale for pursuing an end to the conflict. It goes far beyond self-interest. I want to talk about how the ongoing conflict impacts the heart and the soul of the Jewish people. There's a terrific video that's making the rounds right now from the Jewish Social Justice Roundtable that takes excerpts of President Obama's speech from 2 years ago at the Union of Reformed Judaism. The video picks up the president's use of the biblical phrase, Hineni, here I am. It makes a powerful statement about the role of the American Jewish community in fighting for justice and for equality here and around the world. I was there for that speech, and it was electrifying. For those who missed it, the president talked eloquently of the Jewish community's role in the civil rights movement, marching hand in hand with John Lewis, who will be here later this evening as soon as votes end in Congress, which is why I'm on a little early tonight. In the women's movement, in labor organizing, the president taps directly into the integral role that this legacy plays in the American Jewish identity. And it's why I know so many of you, are so deeply proud to be part of this community. I am proud that we have always stood up for those who are being pushed down. I am proud that we marched and rode for freedom in the South in the 1960s. I am proud that we are leaders in the fight against discrimination because we knew it all too well. All throughout our community, we give life to a central precept of our people, that we shall not treat other people the way that we would not want to be treated ourselves. When confronted with challenges to our values, we say, as the president noted, Hineni, here I am, in the great tradition of Abraham, in the great tradition of Joseph. Count us in. Count us in. Whether the struggle is against disease and poverty in Africa, whether it is against homelessness in our inner cities, or hunger in rural America. Count us in, we say, to repair the world, to bring life to the Jewish values on which we were raised. Well, my friends, the principles and the values that guide us, that guide the Jewish community in all of this great work, simply can't come to a grinding halt at the borders of the state of Israel. The American Jewish community must answer the call to help find a just and secure resolution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. We must say Hineni for Israel. Yes, in times of war. Yes, when Israel faces threats to its security. But we must say Hineni. We are there in its search for peace. And we must say Hineni to stand up for the right of the Palestinian people to a home of their own and their quest for freedom and self-determination. It is time for us to make clear that to be pro-Israel means supporting strong American leadership that is necessary to help end this conflict. American leadership and engagement is absolutely necessary if the sides are in fact going to solve their long-standing differences, bridge their gaps, and do what it takes to seal the deal. Both the President and the Secretary of State understand this, and they have made it clear that all leaders sometimes need a push to do the right thing. And that's no less true here in the United States than it is for the parties themselves. Dror already quoted the president's memorable comment in Jerusalem that political leaders will never take risks if the people do not push them to take some risks. You must create the change that you want to see. And in June, the Secretary turned to the American Jewish community and all friends of Israel, and he asked us to send the strong message that we are behind the hopeful vision that he and the President have laid out of what the future can be. He asked us to be the great constituency for peace. So tonight I say to all of you involved in J Street, the students, the rabbis, the thousands of activists in this room, and our supporters who are watching at home, this is our moment. The months ahead present a rare opportunity to reach that historic compromise that ends the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. I know the odds are long, but the window is still open. Failure cannot and must not be an option. Even the skeptics acknowledge that the fallout from failure could be horrific, and the chances of success partly depend on us. We must push our leaders, and we must make our voices heard. It is time for us to lead in building the great constituency for peace. That is why I am so pleased to say that today, J Street is launching a new campaign. We call it the Two Campaign, to mobilize and expand support for ending the Israeli-Palestinian conflict through a negotiated two-state solution. The time has come, however, for a campaign that moves beyond just lip service, beyond simply expressing support for two states, to defining what it actually means and what it's really going to take. We should be encouraged that today, the two-state solution is supported by the overwhelming majority of Jewish Americans and Americans generally. It has been adopted as national policy by Republican and Democratic presidents alike. Even established organizations like AIPAC and the American Jewish Committee and federations count themselves as two-state supporters. That means we now have a new challenge to help those who have adopted the language of two states to understand and get behind what it really is going to take to get there. For instance, how can you support a two-state solution and not be willing to talk about making the Palestinian neighborhoods of Jerusalem the capital of the new state of Palestine? How can you support a two-state solution yet refuse to acknowledge that the border is going to be drawn along the pre-67 armistice lines with minor agreed-upon land swaps? How can you say you support the two-state solution and call those pre-67 borders indefensible, or be unwilling to talk about evacuating settlements and bringing settlers home to within the eventual borders of the State of Israel? And similarly, for Palestinians, how can you say that you support the two-state solution and be unwilling to acknowledge that the refugees, those refugees from 1948 still alive, and the millions of their descendants will not be returning to the State of Israel? Yes, their rights will have to be addressed, but they will be addressed through an agreement that provides compensation and assistance in resettling permanently in the new state of Palestine or elsewhere. Similarly, let's acknowledge that there won't be an agreement unless Israel's security concerns are addressed. And that means most likely the demilitarization of the Palestinian state and a significant international security presence on the new state's borders. That is the essence of the Two Campaign, to build the great constituency for peace that Secretary of State Kerry has called for, and explain what a two-state solution really entails. J Street is committed to this campaign. We will put $1 million forward immediately into a large national advertising campaign. We will gather tens of thousands of signatures on a petition expressing our support for the Secretary's efforts. We will hold town halls across the country with thousands of supporters in at least a dozen cities. We'll run educational programs in synagogues, community centers, and supporters' homes. My friends, it is our time to lead, to build the great constituency for peace, to provide the Secretary and the President with the support they need for their work. Please join me in watching the launch video for our Two Campaign.
Political leaders will never take risks if the people do not push them to take some risks. You must create the change that you want to see.
I believe that the only way to keep the values of the State of Israel as a Jewish democratic state is to enter the negotiations room and end the conflict with the Palestinians in accordance to the idea of two states for two peoples.
If we don't have a two-state solution, we don't have a Jewish state.
There is no option but a two-state solution. A state of Palestine to live in peace and security next to the state of Israel.
Everybody's so loyal and looking after us, but it's not looking after us. You have to support Israel to get out of the occupied territories.
The American Jewish involvement in this is very, very important.
We need world Jewry telling us Israelis, please come to your senses.
We need you, the American Jews, to speak out and to speak very clear and support the idea of two-state solution.
The survival of Israel depends on achieving the two-state solution.
Real Zionism today is helping Israel to find a solution with our neighbors. Help the administration to help us in order to get the two-state solution.
A two-state solution that will bring an end to the conflict between us and the Palestinians and will create peace that will secure more than anything else the future and the security of the state of Israel.
For your children, do this. For your grandchildren, do this. For Israeli children and Palestinian children, and for Israel. Let them know that you stand behind negotiations that will lead to two states for two peoples living side by side in peace and security, and that you are part of the great constituency for peace.
Negotiations will be necessary, but there's a little secret about where they must lead. Two states for two peoples. Two states for two peoples.
My friends, the campaign starts tonight with the launch of the two campaign petition. We are telling Secretary Kerry not only is there broad support for his work in general, but there is support for the specific and difficult elements of a two-state deal. You can see the text of our petition on the screens to my left and to my right. The petition goes through all the core issues that I discussed earlier. It covers borders, security, refugees, settlements, Jerusalem. If you are ready to support this new campaign, take out your phone right now. I know that's contrary to what they say in most large audiences. That's right, go ahead, take out your phones. All right, how many of you were texting and tweeting anyway? Take out those phones and text the words "to campaign" to 69866. Let's get thousands of names on this petition right now. To learn more about the campaign, you can visit the campaign's website, twocampaign.org. That's the number 2 and the word campaign.org. And go ahead, text, send the link around. Email your friends and family right now or at home. Ask them to join. Post this link on Facebook. Tweet about it. Let's get this campaign started right. Let's get it started right now. My friends, it is your time to lead. Will you join me in saying Hineni and kicking this new campaign off by standing and applauding if you've already signed this petition? If you're ready to join President Obama and say that peace is necessary and just and possible, stand up and make yourselves heard. Come on, everybody. If you are ready to join Secretary Kerry in building the great constituency for peace, stand and make yourself heard. My friends, if you are ready, please join me in welcoming to J Street the woman who is one of the clearest voices and strongest advocates for reaching a two-state peace deal with the Palestinian people. She is Israel's Justice Minister, she is its lead negotiator, and she began the talks last month by saying, "History isn't made by cynics, it is made by realists who are not afraid to dream. Let us be these people." Please join me in welcoming one of those strong leaders we desperately need, Israel's Justice Minister, Tzipi Livni.